The Cathari Armada arrived without warning. One moment the Sol system was quiet. The next it was filled with ships, thousands of them dark and silent like blades floating in the void. They did not hail Earth. They did not ask for talks. They simply broadcast a single message across every channel, every screen, every speaker from the moon bases, to the Mars colonies, to the deep space. Outposts, surrender or be erased. The message repeated every 30 seconds in perfect English with no accent, no emotion, just cold, clean words that made blood run cold. Governments scrambled. Militaries locked onto targets that were too far, too fast, too many. Panic spread like fire through dry grass. On the moon at the Lunar Defense Command Center, Lena Cruz watched the data stream with sharp eyes and steady hands. She was only 29, but had spent half her life tracking orbital threats, asteroids, comets, rogue satellites. Nothing had prepared her for this. The Cathari ships moved in perfect unison like a single mind controlling them all. Their hulls absorbed radar. Their engines left no heat trail. They were ghosts made of steel and shadow. Lena pulled up old records. She cross-referenced every known alien contact humanity had ever logged. There were none. Not real ones. Just rumors and hoaxes. But the Cathari were real, and they had already done this before. Buried in encrypted military archives, she found it. Scans from deep space probes sent decades ago. Signals from dead worlds. Planets with no life. No cities, just smooth, glassy surfaces where oceans and forests once stood. Each one bore the same symbol now flashing on Earth screens, a spiral with 3 broken lines. They had wiped out entire civilizations, and now they were at humanity's door. While Lena worked far beneath the ice of Europa in a research dome buried under 2 kilometers of frozen water, Myra Patel sat alone in a dim lab. She was a xenolinguist, but with no aliens to study. She had spent years decoding strange signals picked up by deep space antennas. Most were noise, but some were not. 3 days before the Armada arrived, Myra had isolated a repeating pattern in data from the Voyager probes, old human machines drifting near the edge of the solar system. The signal was faint, almost gone, but it pulsed in a rhythm that felt intentional, not random, not natural. And it responded when she sent back simple math sequences, prime numbers, Fibonacci strings. Now with the Cathari demanding surrender, Myra tried something new. She sent the signal a single word in every human language she could access. No. For hours, nothing happened. Then the probes went dark. Not broken. Just silent. As if they had heard. As if they were waiting. Back on Earth, the United Earth Council met in emergency session. Voices rose. Some argued for surrender. Others for resistance. But their weapons were toys compared to the Cathari fleet. Their best ships would be swatted aside like flies. After 12 hours of shouting, the council voted. They would comply. They would lower their shields. They would open their ports. The announcement went out at 0300 UTC. Earth surrenders. Do not fire. Stand down. Lena heard it over the comms and slammed her fist on the console. She knew what surrender meant. Glassed cities. Empty skies. The end of everything human. But she was just one officer on the moon. She had no power to stop it. Except something else was happening. Deep in Earth's oldest orbital platform systems that had been offline for decades suddenly woke up. Power surged through forgotten circuits. Encrypted protocols activated without human input. On screens across the solar system, new icons appeared. 3 massive objects labeled only as Asset Alpha, Asset Beta, Asset Gamma. Their locations were listed in the Oort cloud far beyond Pluto. No one had built them. No one claimed them. But they were there. And they were moving. Lena stared at the tracking data. The objects accelerated faster than physics allowed. No exhaust, no warp signature. They just appeared closer every time the system refreshed, and they were heading straight for the Cathari fleet. On Europa, Myra watched her monitors light up with energy spikes so strong they overloaded the sensors. The signal was back. Stronger now, and it was coming from the same direction as the 3 unknown assets. She whispered to the empty room. "You're not ours, are you?" But the machines answered anyway. Down on Earth, people looked up, not at the sky but at their phones, their tablets, their street screens. The surrender message flickered. Then changed. 3 words replaced it. Stand your ground. No one knew who sent it, but it spread like lightning. Soldiers hesitated. Pilots kept their fingers on triggers. City lights stayed on. The Cathari fleet shifted formation. Their silence broke. For the first time, they transmitted something new. Not words, a sound. low, deep trembling like a growl across the stars. It carried fear. Because the three objects were no longer distant points on a screen. They were here, hanging in the void between Mars and Jupiter, blacker than space itself, each one the size of a small moon. Smooth, no windows, no weapons visible, just presence, weight, purpose. Lena felt her breath catch. She had seen simulations of Planetkillers in old war games, theoretical weapons that could crack worlds. But those were fiction. These were real. And they were awake. The Kthari sent a new message, shorter this time. Identify your weapons. There was no reply, only silence from the three giants. Then one of them moved. Not toward Earth, not toward the fleet. It drifted slightly as if turning its face to the sun, and in that moment every human who saw it felt something strange. Not fear, not hope, recognition. Like the machine knew them, like it had been waiting. On the moon, Lena typed a command she should not have known, a sequence of numbers she had never seen before. But her fingers moved on their own. The system accepted it. A new window opened. It showed a live feed from inside one of the objects, not a cockpit, not a control room, just a vast chamber filled with shifting light, and in the center a single symbol glowed, the same spiral the Kthari used, but unbroken, whole. Lena understood then. The Kthari had stolen that symbol, twisted it, used it as a brand of conquest, but the real one belonged to something older, something that chose its wielders, and it had chosen humanity. The United Earth Council tried to cancel the surrender order. Too late. The Kthari were already reacting. Their lead ships turned toward the three Planetkillers. Weapons charged. Beams of violet energy lanced out. They struck the nearest object and vanished. Not deflected, not blocked. Erased. As if they had never existed. The Planetkiller did not fire back. It simply continued to drift. Calm. Patient. Inevitable. Lena stood up. Her heart pounded, but her voice was steady when she spoke into the comm. All stations, this is Lunar Command. Do not stand down. Repeat, do not stand down. We are not surrendering. Somewhere on Europa, Mira sent one more message into the void. Not a word. Just a song. An old lullaby her grandmother used to sing. The Planetkiller closest to Mars pulsed once. A soft ripple of blue light ran across its surface. Then it turned fully toward the Kthari fleet. The war had not ended. It had just begun, and humanity was no longer the prey. Before the surrender order could be fully carried out, the three Planetkillers moved. They did not fire weapons. They did not speak. They simply shifted position and the Kthari fleet froze. Their perfect formation broke. Ships drifted apart as if confused. Then the first Kthari vessel tore itself apart. Not from an explosion, but from the space around it twisting like fabric in a storm. Metal screamed as it was pulled in opposite directions at once. Then silence. Only dust remained. On Earth, people watched in stunned silence. No one claimed the Planetkillers. No government, no corporation, no secret group stepped forward to say they built them. They just were. And they were protecting humanity. Lena Cruz stayed at her post on the moon. Her eyes never left the main screen. The Planetkillers hovered now between Earth and the remaining Kthari ships. They looked like smooth black stones floating in a river of stars. But Lena knew better. She had seen the data. Their mass was impossible. Their energy output off the charts. And they responded to human presence. Not commands. Not signals. Presence, meanwhile on Europa, Mira Patel worked through the night. Her small lab was filled with printouts and glowing screens. She had matched the Planetkiller's energy signature to ruins found decades ago on Mars. Ruins that had been dismissed as natural rock formations. But now the data was clear. The ruins pulsed with the same rhythm as the machines, and they only activated when humans were near. Mira sent a message to the United Earth Council. She begged them to send a team to the Mars site. But the council was in chaos. Some leaders wanted to thank the Planetkillers. Others wanted to destroy them before they turned on Earth. No one agreed on anything. Then the Kthari struck. Not at Earth. Not at the moon. They targeted the outer colonies. Mars first. Then Titan. Their warships descended like hawks. Beams of violet light cut through domes and cities. Fire spread across red deserts. Ice melted on Saturn's moon. Millions died in hours. The message was clear. If humanity would not surrender, the Kthari would burn its children. Grief turned to rage. Protests filled the streets. Soldiers refused to stand down. Pilots armed their ships. And still the Planetkillers did nothing. They watched, waited, until one human stepped forward. Dana Brooks was not a soldier. She was an astrophysicist who had spent most of her career studying dead stars. She worked at a small observatory on Ceres. Quiet, unnoticed. But she had seen something no one else had. The Planetkillers did not move randomly. They aligned with ancient human-made objects. Old satellites. Abandoned stations. Even the Voyager probes. It was as if they were following a trail only they could see. Dana sent a request to Lunar Command. She wanted to go to one of the Planetkillers, to board it, study it, understand it. Everyone said it was suicide. The machines were too dangerous, too unknown. But Lena remembered Dana from old research papers. She trusted her. So she approved the mission. A small shuttle launched from the moon. Dana was alone inside. No weapons, no armor. Just a datapad and a heart full of fear and hope. She flew toward the nearest Planetkiller asset, Alpha. As she got closer, her instruments went wild. Gravity readings flipped. Time slowed, then stopped. For 3 seconds, Dana saw nothing but white light. Then she was inside. The shuttle floated in a vast chamber. Walls of smooth black material curved into a dome so high it vanished in shadow. No doors, no controls. Just silence. Dana stepped out in her suit. Her boots made no sound. Then she saw it. In the center of the room, a pillar of crystal rose from the floor. It glowed with soft blue light, and it pulsed like a heartbeat. Dana approached slowly. As she got closer, the crystal brightened. Images formed in the air around her. Not pictures, memories, human memories. A child laughing. A farmer planting seeds. A scientist solving an equation. A soldier sharing water with an enemy. Moments of kindness. Courage. Creation. The Planetkiller was not a weapon. It was a judge. It watched humanity. Tested them. And only when they proved worthy would it act. Dana understood then why it had not saved Mars or Titan. It was waiting for humanity to choose. To stand together. To fight not out of hate but out of love for what they were. She reached out and touched the crystal. Instantly her mind filled with knowledge. Not words, feelings, purpose. The Planetkillers were made long ago by a race that had faced the same choice. Surrender or rise. They had risen. And they left their legacy behind for others who might do the same. They chose humanity not because they were strong, but because they kept trying even when broken. Dana knew what she had to do. She returned to her shuttle. As she left the chamber, the Planetkiller shifted. It turned fully toward the Cathari fleet, and this time it did not wait. It moved faster than light. One moment it was near Ceres, the next it was beside a Cathari dreadnought. The dreadnought fired. Beams of energy vanished before they reached the Planetkiller. Then space itself bent. The dreadnought folded in on itself like paper crushed in a fist. Gone. The other 2 Planetkillers joined the fight. They did not use missiles or lasers. They used gravity, time, reality. They twisted the laws of physics like toys. Cathari ships shattered without a sound. Their crews vanished into folds of space that should not exist. The Cathari had never seen anything like this. Their records showed no species had ever wielded such power. They assumed humanity was primitive, weak, easy to crush. They were wrong. Back on Earth, people watched the battle in awe. No one cheered. No one celebrated. They felt the weight of what was happening. This was not just a war. It was a test, and humanity was passing it. But the Cathari were not done. They had one last weapon, something they had used only once in their long history. A bioplague, not meant to kill the body but the mind. It targeted neural pathways, erased thought, broke the link between brain and soul. Without that link, the Planetkillers would not respond. They needed human will to function. The plague spread through comms networks, through implants, through anything that carried a human signal. Within hours, people began collapsing. Not dead, just empty. Eyes open, but minds gone. The Planetkillers slowed. Their movements became uncertain. Lena saw it happening on her screens. The machines were losing connection. She tried to send new commands, but nothing worked. The link was fading. On Europa, Mira watched her colleagues fall one by one. She unplugged everything, used old paper notes, but she knew it was not enough. The plague was in the airwaves, in the satellites, in the very idea of connection. Dana returned to Ceres, shaken but alive. She knew the truth now. The Planetkillers needed more than one person. They needed all of humanity. Their pain, their joy, their will to live. But how do you unite a species when its mind is being erased? Then an idea came to her. Simple, old, human. She opened every public channel she could find, not with words, with sound, with music, with voices. She broadcast lullabies, folk songs, protest chants, wedding vows, anything real, anything raw, anything that could not be faked. Others joined. In bunkers and ruins and hidden labs, people sent their own voices. A mother singing to her baby, a teacher reading a story, a poet reciting under stars. The signals were weak, but they were true. And the Planetkillers heard. Deep in their cores, the crystals glowed brighter. The machines remembered. They were not just for the strong or the smart. They were for everyone who refused to give up. The Cathari watched in horror as the Planetkillers reawakened, not slower, stronger, faster, angrier. They had thought they could break humanity by breaking its mind, but they had only made it more human, and humanity was not done fighting. Lena stood on the moon and watched the battle unfold. She felt no fear now, only purpose. She opened a channel to every surviving ship, every station, every person who could hear. "This is not our end," she said. "This is our beginning." And far out in the void, the three Planetkillers turned as one toward the heart of the Cathari fleet, ready to finish what they started. The Cathari were gone, but not defeated. Their fleet had scattered into the dark between stars, yet their fear remained. They had seen something they could not understand, a species that turned pain into power, memory into might. They would not return soon, but they would tell others, and others would come. Earth was broken but alive. Cities lay in ruins, yet voices still rose from the rubble. The plague had faded, but its shadow lingered. Some people never fully came back. Their minds stayed quiet, but those who remained whole carried them. They spoke for them, remembered for them, loved for them. The Planetkillers hung in orbit, now calm and still. They no longer pulsed with battle light. They watched, waited, as if listening to the heartbeat of the world below. Lena Cruz stayed on the moon. She had become a bridge between Earth and the machines, not by command but by trust. Every day she sent simple messages, not orders, just updates. A child was born in New Delhi. Wheat sprouted in Kansas. Rain fell on the Sahara. Small things, human things. And the Planetkillers listened. Dana Brooks traveled from Ceres to Mars. She led a team to the ancient ruins there. The site had changed. Where once there was only rock, now there were patterns of light in the stone. They shifted when humans walked nearby. Dana believed the ruins were not just a trigger. They were a classroom, teaching humanity how to be worthy of the power they now held. Mira Patel returned to Europa. She studied the signals from the Planetkillers. They were not random. They followed cycles tied to human emotion. Joy made the light blue. Grief made it deep red. Hope made it gold. The machines were not just mirrors. They were partners. But peace did not last. Deep in Cathari space, their High Council met in silence. They had lost face. Their name meant terror across 1,000 worlds. Now they were known as the ones who fled from primitives. Shame burned hotter than any star. They would not attack again. Not directly, but they would send something worse. A whisper. They broadcast a single idea across neutral channels. A story, not of war but of warning. They claimed the Planetkillers were not gifts. They were traps. Ancient weapons that would one day turn on their users. That humanity was being used, shaped, prepared for something far worse. The story spread, not through force but through doubt. On Earth, some began to listen. What if the machines were not on their side? What if they were waiting, watching, learning how to control? Fear returned, not of the Cathari, of their own protectors. Protests formed, not against enemies but against the Planetkillers. People demanded they leave. Go back to the void. Let humanity stand alone. Lena saw the shift in the data. Trust was falling, and as it fell, the Planetkillers dimmed. Their light grew cold. Nora Finch heard the whispers in Chicago. She saw friends turn on each other. Some said the machines were gods. Others said they were devils. No one agreed. And without agreement, the connection weakened. She knew what she had to do. Nora gathered her old transmitter. She did not argue. She did not shout. She simply played a sound. The first cry of a baby born that morning in a field hospital. Raw, real, alive. Then she added another, an old man playing piano in a ruined theater. Then a group of kids laughing as they fixed a broken bike. Sound after sound, moment after moment. Not perfect. Not grand. Just human. She sent it all into the sky. Others joined. Not with words, with life. A farmer plowing a field. A nurse holding a patient's hand. A teacher writing on a chalkboard. These were not acts of war. They were acts of being. The Planetkillers responded. Not with light. With movement. One of them drifted closer to Earth. Not to threaten. To watch. To learn. It hovered over the Amazon where people were replanting trees. Over the Pacific where fishers shared their catch. Over the Himalayas where monks rang bells at dawn. It was studying not how to fight but how to live. Dana saw this from Mars. She realized the truth. The Planetkillers were not finished with humanity. They were just beginning. The war had been the test. Now came the lesson. She sent a message to Lena. We must show them not just our courage, but our care. Lena understood. She opened every channel, not for orders, for stories. Real ones, messy ones. She asked people to share not their victories, but their kindnesses, the small things that made life worth living. A woman gave her last bottle of water to a stranger. A boy shared his bread with a dog. A scientist stayed up all night to help a student understand. These were the signals that mattered. The Planetkillers glowed soft gold. But the Cathari were not done. They sent a new message. Not to Earth, to other species. They told of humanity's new power, how they wielded Planetkillers like toys, how they would soon come for others. Fear spread through the galaxy. Worlds that had never heard of Earth now saw it as a threat. Ships began to gather at the edge of Sol System. Not Cathari, others. The Viral, the Zenth, the Orlan. They came not to fight, to watch, to decide if humanity was friend or foe. Earth did not know, but the Planetkillers did. They turned toward the newcomers, not with weapons. With openness, one of them sent out a pulse. Not of energy, of memory. It showed the Viral their own past, a time when they too had faced extinction, and chose to help each other. The Viral ship stopped. Its crew wept. They had forgotten that part of their history. The Zenth received a different memory. Their first song, lost centuries ago, now heard again. One by one the alien ships turned away, not in fear. In understanding, humanity was not a threat. They were a mirror, showing others who they used to be. Back on Earth, Nora sat under the stars. She knew the fight was not over. But it had changed. It was no longer about survival. It was about meaning. Lena looked at the data and smiled. Trust was rising again, not blind faith. Earned trust, built on truth. Dana walked among the Mars ruins and felt the stone hum beneath her feet. The lesson was clear. Power without purpose is empty, but purpose without power is silent. Humanity had both now. Mira recorded the shift in the signals. The Planetkillers were no longer just reacting. They were guiding. Gently, patiently. And far out in the void, the three great machines watched over Sol, not as guards, but as guardians, waiting for the next test. The next step. The next song from a girl on a rooftop. Humanity had faced the dark, and instead of hiding, they had lit a candle, and the universe had leaned in to see the flame. The Cathari plague spread faster than anyone expected. It did not kill the body. It killed the mind. People walked but did not speak. They breathed but did not dream. Their eyes were open but empty. The link between humanity and the Planetkillers began to fade. The great machines slowed. Their movements grew uncertain. Their light dimmed. On Earth, cities fell silent. Not from bombs, but from absence. No laughter, no arguments, no songs. Just quiet. The Cathari watched from orbit. They believed they had won. Without thought, without will, humanity was nothing. And without humanity, the Planetkillers were just stone. But they were wrong. In the ruins of Chicago, a girl named Nora Finch sat in a basement lit by a single battery-powered lamp. She was only 16, but she had grown up fixing old radios and hacking into dead networks. Her parents were gone, taken by the plague. But Nora still had her mind, and she had an idea. She knew the Planetkillers responded to real human feeling, not just commands. So she built a small transmitter from scrap parts. She found old recordings, a grandmother singing to her grandchild, a street musician playing guitar in the rain, a firefighter calling out names in the dark. She mixed them together and sent the signal into the sky. At first nothing happened. Then a light flickered on the horizon. Not from a city, from space. One of the Planetkillers pulsed faintly. It had heard Nora kept sending. She reached out to others who still had their minds. Survivors hiding in tunnels, farms, mountains. They sent their own voices, their own memories. A fisherman describing the sea at dawn, a baker kneading dough before sunrise, a child drawing a picture of the stars. Simple things, human things. The Planetkillers began to stir again. Meanwhile, on the moon, Lena Cruz worked without sleep. She had seen the plague coming. She had cut all digital links, used paper maps, old radios, voice-only comms. She gathered every officer who still had their thoughts. They formed a small team. Their mission was clear: protect the connection between Earth and the machines. On Europa, Meera Patel sealed her lab. She used analog systems only. No implants, no networks. Just her voice and her hands. She recorded everything she knew about the Mars ruins, the signals, the symbols. She sent it all in a burst transmission aimed at the Planetkillers. Not as data, as a story. A human story. Dana Brooks on Series did the same. She gathered scientists, engineers, artists, anyone who could still feel. They built a network of low-power transmitters, each one sending raw, unfiltered human experience into the void. Not for the Cathari, not for history, for the machines. The Planetkillers listened. They were not weapons. They were mirrors. They showed what humanity truly was. Not perfect, not strong, but stubborn, kind, creative. Even in the dark, they made light. The Cathari did not understand. They saw only weakness. So they struck again, this time with their last great ship, the World Ender. It was larger than any moon. Its hull was made from the bones of dead planets. It carried a weapon that could collapse a star. It arrived at the edge of the solar system and aimed its core at the sun. If it fired, Sol would die, and with it all life in the system. Panic should have returned. But it did not, because humanity was no longer waiting to be saved. They were fighting back with the only thing the Cathari could not erase: their spirit. Lena sent a message to every surviving ship, every station, every outpost. She did not order them to attack. She asked them to remember, to share one memory that made them human. Pilots spoke of first flights, medics of lives saved, teachers of students who finally understood. The messages poured in, not as data, as voices, as heartbeats. The Planetkillers responded. They moved not as three, but as one. They formed a triangle around the World Ender. The Cathari ship fired. A beam of pure darkness shot toward the sun, but the Planetkillers bent space itself. The beam curved back on itself and vanished into a hole in reality. The World Ender tried again, and again. Each time the Planetkillers redirected the attack, not with force, with understanding. They knew the laws of the universe better than the Cathari ever could. But the real battle was not in space. It was in the minds of humans. Nora Finch climbed to the roof of her building. She held her transmitter high. She sang a song her mother used to sing, a simple tune about stars and home. Her voice was small but clear, and it carried. Others joined. From every corner of Earth, voices rose, not in unison, not in perfect harmony, but in truth messy, broken, beautiful. The Planetkillers glowed brighter than ever. Their surfaces rippled with blue and gold light. They were no longer just machines. They were alive with human will. The Cathari commander aboard the World Ender felt something he had never felt before: doubt. His people had conquered 1,000 worlds, but none had ever done this. None had ever turned their own pain into power. He ordered a full retreat, but it was too late. The three Planetkillers merged, not physically, but in purpose. They became a single presence, a storm of light and gravity and memory. They did not destroy the World Ender. They changed it. The great ship shuddered. Its dark metal softened, bloomed, turned into something new. Crystalline towers rose from its hull. Gardens of light spread across its surface. Stars formed in its core. It was no longer a weapon. It was a cradle. The Cathari fled. Their fleet scattered into the void. They had come to erase humanity. Instead, they had witnessed its birth as something greater. On Earth, the plague began to fade, not because it was cured, but because the human mind had grown stronger. The connection was not broken. It was renewed. Lena stood on the moon and watched the new star bloom where the World Ender once was. She felt no triumph, only awe. Dana held her datapad and smiled through tears. She knew the truth now. The Planetkillers were never meant to be controlled. They were meant to be earned. Meera whispered a thank you to the ruins on Mars. They had waited so long for someone worthy. and Nora sat on her roof under real stars and sang again, this time not out of fear, but out of hope. Humanity had not won a war. They had passed a test, and the universe was watching. The silence lasted 3 days. No Cthari ships, no alien fleets, no signals from the void. Just quiet, but it was not peace. It was the calm before the final storm. Everyone knew it. The Cthari would not let their shame stand. They had one last weapon. Not a ship, not a plague, but truth twisted into fear. They sent a broadcast not to Earth but to every world that listened. They showed images of the Planetkillers reshaping space-tearing stars, bending time. They called humanity a danger to the galaxy, a child playing with fire, and they demanded the machines be destroyed or all would suffer. Some believed them. Fear spread faster than light. Worlds that had once watched now armed themselves. They pointed weapons at Sol, not because they wanted war, but because they were afraid of what they did not understand. On Earth, people argued again. Some said give up the machines, live small, safe. Others said never. We earned this. We are not going back. The Planetkillers hung in orbit unmoving. They did not react to the threats. They waited for humanity to choose. Lena Cruz stood on the moon and watched the data flow. Trust was breaking again. Not from outside. From within. Doubt was the real enemy, and it was winning. Then Nora Finch did something simple. She walked into the center of Chicago. No transmitter, no gear. Just her voice. She began to sing. The same lullaby she had sung during the plague. Others heard. They came out of hiding. They joined her. Not with weapons. With voices. Soon hundreds stood together singing not for the machines. For each other. The Planetkillers glowed soft blue. Dana Brooks on Mars gathered her team. They did not hide in the ruins. They walked out into the open. They planted seeds in the red soil, watered them with recycled air, and as the first green shoots rose, they broadcast the image to every world that watched. This is what we protect, they said without words, not power. Life. Mira Patel on Europa sent one last message. Not data, not code. A single human heartbeat recorded from a newborn on Earth. Steady, strong, alive. She sent it to every ship at the edge of the system. The Virile received it. They remembered their own young, their own hope. They lowered their weapons. The Zenth heard it and wept. But the Cthari did not care. They had made their choice. From the dark beyond Pluto, their final ship emerged. Not the world ender. Something older, darker, the firstborn. A vessel built from the core of a dead god. It carried no weapons. It was the weapon. It could unmake reality itself. It moved toward the sun. Lena knew they could not fight it with force. The Planetkillers had shown that already. But this was different. The firstborn did not obey physics. It erased them. She opened a channel to every human left with a voice. She did not ask for courage. She asked for truth. Tell them who we are, she said. And they did. A fisherman in Norway spoke of the sea at dawn. A grandmother in Kenya told a story her mother taught her. A boy in Tokyo drew a picture of the stars and held it to the sky. A doctor in Brazil sang to a patient who could not sleep. These were not grand acts. They were human ones. The Planetkillers stirred. They did not move toward the firstborn. They moved toward each other. Slowly. Gently. As if joining hands. Then they merged. Not into one ship, but into one will. A presence so vast it bent light around it. A storm of memory and matter. The firstborn fired. Not a beam. A thought. An idea of nothingness. It raced toward the sun. The Planetkiller did not block it. It met it with something stronger. Meaning, it showed the firstborn every human moment ever lived. Every tear, every laugh, every act of kindness. It showed the pain, yes, but also the healing. The loss, but also the love that followed. It showed that nothing is truly gone if it is remembered. The idea of nothingness faltered. It had no answer for meaning. The firstborn shuddered. Its dark core cracked. Light poured out, not fire, not destruction. Life. Vines of starlight grew from its hull. Flowers of plasma bloomed in the void. It was not destroyed. It was transformed. Like the world ender before it. It became a garden. A cradle for new worlds. The Cthari fleet watching from afar broke formation. Not in retreat, in awe. Their commander removed his helmet and wept. He had spent his life erasing. Now he saw what it meant to create. He sent one message to Earth, not in threat, In thanks, you showed us what we lost. Then he turned his ship toward home, to tell his people there was another way. On Earth, silence fell again, but this time it was different. It was full, not empty. Lena walked out of the Lunar Command Center. She looked at Earth hanging in the black, blue and white and green. Alive. She knew they were not safe forever. Other threats would come, other tests, but they were ready. Dana stood in the Mars field and touched the green chute. It was real, fragile, strong, like them. Mira listened to the heartbeat still echoing through space. It had reached 100 worlds now, and more were listening. Nora sat on her roof and watched the new star where the firstborn once was. It pulsed gently like a heart. The Planetkillers drifted apart. They returned to their silent watch, not as masters, as guardians. They had chosen well, and far out in the Oort cloud deep in the ice of forgotten comets more machines slept, waiting, not for warriors, for those who would say no to fear and yes to each other. Humanity had not won by destroying. They won by being human, messy, broken, kind, and brave. And that was enough. The stars watched, and for the first time in a long time they were not afraid.